Keir Starmer humiliated in urgent GB News breaking news alert. Nothing but contempt. Sir Keir Starmer was dealt a huge blow on GB News following his response to a terror attack. Prime Minister Keir Starmer was dealt a major blow after being accused of indulging in anti-Semitic rhetoric in a breaking news alert on GB News. This comes after the UK leader responded to a terror attack in Manchester. The Greater Manchester Police confirmed that 2 members of the Jewish community died and 3 more are left seriously injured, after a car was driven at pedestrians and a person was stabbed outside the Heaton Park Hebrew Congregation Synagogue in Crumpsall on Thursday, September 2 morning. Following his statement, condemning the attacks, the former editor of the Jewish Chronicle, Jake Wallace-Simons, joined Michelle Dewberry on GB News and claimed that Jews feel abandoned by this government. Simons stated, "I feel nothing but contempt for the Prime Minister. Last week he was being congratulated by Hamas. This week he's lamenting a Hamas-style attack in Manchester. He deserves nothing but contempt. He has presided over a government that increasingly has been hostile to Israel, just when Israel is battling for its life and needs our support." The journalist added, "His recognition of a Palestinian state placed no demands on the Palestinians at all, not for Hamas to lay down its arms, not for Hamas to even release the hostages. We just gave them a stage regardless." Simons continued, "Jews feel abandoned by him, abandoned by this government and abandoned by pretty much every politician on the left that shed crocodile tears today and while spreading anti-Semitic bile month after month, over the last couple of years." Michelle asked the former editor, "Are you suggesting that Keir Starmer doesn't understand the sentiment and feeling of British Jews? Do you think that he understands and doesn't care? What do you think is driving this?" "It's impossible to look into Keir Starmer's soul, if indeed he has a soul, to find out where exactly this hypocrisy is coming from," Simons slammed. He then claimed that Starmer throws the Jews political crumbs while advancing policies that are contrary to Jewish interests and indeed security. His indulgence of this anti-Semitic rhetoric, which has criticized Israel far more than Hamas. Hamas is the jihadi group that started this war, that committed the atrocities, and Israel is trying to protect its people and get its hostages home as best as it can. Simons added, "Hamas is playing the game of human sacrifice, if I can call it a depraved game. Israel is trying to protect lives the best it can while still winning the war. Keir Starmer has been buying their propaganda, spreading it, condemning Israel, and not condemning Hamas nearly as much and whipping up people's emotions against Israel, against our natural ally in democracy, as it seeks to defend its people. Shame on him." In the emergency Cobra meeting, the Prime Minister stated, "Earlier today, on Yom Kippur, the holiest day for the Jewish community, a vile individual committed a terrorist attack that attacked Jews because they are Jews." Starmer said that Jewish buildings, including synagogues and schools in the UK, now require round-the-clock protection, because of the daily threat of anti-Semitic hatred. "We must be clear, it is a hatred that is rising once again, and Britain must defeat it once again." Addressing the Jewish community, the politician added, "I promise you that I will do everything in my power to guarantee you the security that you deserve, starting with a more visible police presence, protecting your community. I promise you that over the coming days, you will see the other Britain, the Britain of compassion, of decency, of love. And I promise you that this Britain will come together to wrap our arms around your community and show you that Britain is a place where you and your family are safe, secure, and belong." For a man who has spent much of his political career carefully cultivating an image of quiet competence, Sir Keir Starmer was forced to watch that image crack apart live on television this week. In what GB News billed as an urgent breaking news alert, the Labour leader found himself the target of a blistering takedown that left viewers, critics, and even some of his allies stunned. What began as a routine political segment spiraled into an on-air demolition of Starmer's leadership credentials, with the phrase, "nothing but contempt," quickly ricocheting across social media. The humiliation was immediate and merciless. A live broadcast gone wrong. It was shortly after midday when GB News interrupted its programming for what it called a political earthquake. Anchors dramatically introduced the segment as urgent breaking news, raising eyebrows among viewers expecting a crisis or international development. Instead, the story was about Sir Keir himself, his faltering approval ratings, his repeated policy U-turns, and, most importantly, the growing perception that his leadership style inspires indifference at best and disdain at worst. A political commentator, brought in as part of the panel, delivered the line that has since defined the fallout. "Voters look at Keir Starmer and feel nothing but contempt. He promises everything, delivers nothing, and hides behind platitudes when challenged. Britain doesn't need a lawyer reading from a script, it needs a leader with conviction." The camera lingered on the presenter's raised eyebrows, and from that moment, the phrase caught fire. Within minutes, hashtags like hashtag Contempt for Starmer and hashtag GBN Bombshell were trending online. The timing couldn't be worse. The humiliation struck at a particularly sensitive moment for Starmer. Labour's internal factions have been restive for weeks, with backbench MPs privately fuming over Starmer's handling of economic messaging and his perceived lack of vision. His critics argue that despite sitting on a commanding lead in some polls, the Labour leader has done little to define what his premiership would actually look like. By the Conservative Party's ongoing internal strife, Labour has looked strangely stagnant. Commentators across the spectrum have noted that Starmer often looks more like a man dodging bullets than someone stepping confidently toward number 10. The GB News alert poured gasoline on those anxieties. The sight of a major news outlet interrupting its schedule to brand Starmer a figure of contempt created the impression of a leader under siege. Even those who usually dismiss GB News as partisan spectacle couldn't ignore the impact. Social media reaction. This is brutal. Twitter, Facebook, and TikTok exploded within minutes of the broadcast. Memes showing Starmer sitting expressionless with the caption "Nothing but contempt" racked up tens of thousands of shares. On TikTok, edits of the clip were overlaid with dramatic music, painting Starmer as the embodiment of indecision and weakness. One viral post read, "If GB News has to break into programming to call you irrelevant, you're not leading, you're losing." Another, from a former Labour voter, declared, "I supported him when he promised integrity. Now I see nothing but contempt myself." The pile-on extended beyond social media. Comment pieces in rival outlets quickly followed, amplifying the narrative. The Daily Mail described it as the political equivalent of a knockout punch, while the Telegraph suggested the incident cemented Starmer's image as uninspiring and untrustworthy. Allies in disarray. Behind the scenes, Labour sources reportedly scrambled to contain the damage. Party officials dismissed GB News as desperate for attention, but there was a quiet acknowledgement that the words had struck a nerve. One shadow cabinet member, speaking anonymously, admitted, "It's frustrating because it lands. People already see Keir as wooden. When you add contempt to the mix, it stings." Another Labour insider said the clip would inevitably haunt Starmer. "It doesn't matter if you hate GB News or think they're biased. That phrase will get repeated in debates, hustings, and interviews. Once something sticks like that, you can't unstick it." Meanwhile, Conservative MPs gleefully shared the clip across their feeds. One senior Tory tweeted, "Even GB News knows the truth. Sir Keir offers Britain nothing but contempt. A lawyer, not a leader." Starmer's response. Attempting damage control, Starmer appeared later in the day at a scheduled event in Birmingham, where he tried to brush off the controversy. Asked directly about the GB News broadcast, he replied, "Look, I'm focused on the real issues that matter to working people. The economy, the NHS, security. While others throw insults, I'll stay focused on delivering change." The response, however, only reinforced criticisms of his style. Critics noted that his answer sounded rehearsed and failed to meet the ferocity of the attack. "He looked like a man hiding behind talking points," one commentator wrote. "At a moment demanding fire and passion, we got another legal brief." The wider picture. What makes this humiliation particularly damaging is how it dovetails with existing weaknesses. Starmer has long struggled with perceptions of authenticity. While supporters praise his discipline and professionalism, detractors describe him as stiff, uncharismatic, and overly cautious. The "nothing but contempt" framing crystallizes those doubts in a single soundbite. It doesn't just accuse him of being ineffective, it suggests he actively alienates the very people he seeks to lead. In the ruthless world of politics, such branding can be lethal. And timing matters. With the next general election looming, narratives are hardening. If Starmer cannot shake off the contempt label, he risks entering the campaign weighed down by doubts about his leadership. The GB News humiliation could become a self-fulfilling prophecy, sapping Labour's momentum at a critical moment. Viewers divided but impact clear. Not everyone bought into the broadcast's drama. Some viewers accused GB News of manufacturing outrage, calling it a cheap stunt to boost ratings. Loyal Labour supporters pointed out that the channel has often been hostile toward their leader and warned against letting a partisan broadcaster dictate the narrative. But even those critiques acknowledged the impact. The fact that people were debating the clip at all signaled how much it had cut through. By the evening news cycle, Starmer's humiliation was the leading political story of the day. A defining moment? History is littered with moments where a single broadcast shifted public perceptions of a political leader. From infamous debate gaffes to viral slips of the tongue, the modern media landscape magnifies vulnerabilities like never before. For Keir Starmer, the GB News breaking alert may prove to be one of those moments. The danger lies not in the initial clip but in its repetition. Every time an opponent or commentator invokes the phrase, "nothing but contempt," it chips away at his credibility. And unless he finds a way to project conviction and passion, qualities often demanded by voters in times of uncertainty, this humiliation may become a permanent stain on his leadership. Conclusion. Keir Starmer entered politics as a respected lawyer and principled public servant. But politics is not a courtroom, and perception often matters more than evidence. The GB News breaking news alert that branded him a figure of contempt has exposed the fragility of his leadership image. Whether this proves a temporary embarrassment or a defining humiliation depends on Starmer's next moves. But one thing is certain. For millions who watch that broadcast, the phrase "nothing but contempt" will not be forgotten anytime soon.